So, hi everyone. My name's Chris Gage, and I'm co-founder at OpenBuilt. So I've been in the industry a good 15 years or so. Started out doing commercial investigations as an accountant, mostly on infrastructure projects. But if you remember the fiasco with the London 2012 Olympics and the guarding, I led a commercial investigation to G4S. But yeah, certainly spent quite a bit of time in the industry, and then the last 6 or so years, over 6 years, been at IBM, because I wanted to learn how to make software and build teams that make software, and worked with a range of different technologies, things like AI, Internet of Things. But most recently, we had this project that started about 18 months ago. Actually started with COVID because the order book with IBM started going down and we had people on the bench, so there was actually the ability to invest some time in some new innovative initiatives. So that's how we got started with OpenBuilt, and basically it's a connectivity platform for the built environment. So love the presentation for this. I think this could be another piece of the puzzle to actually help connect different data sources into your mission control room. Why did we start making OpenBuilt in the first place? I mean, the industry is dysfunctional. We all know this. Carillion is a good example. There's been many others, Interserve as well. And the fragmentation of the industry, the outsourcing model, creates a lot of problems. And we wanted to try and find a way to help overcome that. I also saw during my time that projects are really inefficient as well. There's so many different layers of subcontracting going on. Completely unrelated to this picture, by the way. It's just a nice picture. But I saw detail into the cost of major programs, and less than half the money actually goes into the ground. So there's a huge amount of inefficiency here, and a lot of it is fee on fee and people managing each other's contracts. So, is there a way we can actually improve that and automate some of those things? There's also the environmental side. Got this kind of build, demolish type model, whereas with the circular economy, there's the opportunity to start reusing more. And, we just kind of felt we needed to find ways to help that along digitally as well. So, that's the kind of reasons why we did it. We had the opportunity to do it because IBM were prepared to invest to get this thing off the ground, and so off we went. And we basically, as I said, started about 18 months ago, but we decided to spin it out as a separate entity. So OpenBuilt Limited is its own separate entity, and the reason for doing that is because we can attract external investment and actually turn this into something that can have life itself. But I'll come on to that a little bit more in a moment. But one of the key things I've learned throughout the whole time I've been working in technology is it's not about actually the technology, which is a funny thing to say when you work for a technology company. But we'll probably all be familiar with these sorts of things. They're not actual quotes, but you'll have probably heard something similar. Like a project manager, love your new technology, great. This project's a bit, it's just a bit difficult at the moment. We'll use it on the next one, don't worry. But then when you aggregate that up 1,000 times, what you end up with is industry inertia, and nothing changes. Another one as well, you mean to tell me that this £10,000 we spent on a new app isn't going to completely transform our business? There's often a kind of misalignment of expectations around what technology can do. People are used to spending £1 or something on downloading an app. I think they can do the same thing in the commercial world, in the enterprise world. And then there's a communication problem. So a tech person might come along and say, we created this digital twin. It's got APIs connected to all our systems of record. We connected to the blockchain, and we've basically got autonomous buildings. But then you're the business person who's kind of, signing this stuff off is going, I have literally no idea what you're just talking about. So, we need to try and find people who can actually be that interface and be able to talk between the boundaries, okay, and explain all this stuff. But technology is the enabler. And just to go into a few examples, artificial intelligence, it enables you to basically get machines to interact with sounds, with vision, with text, and that is a massive improvement over what was possible before. It also enables you to predict the outcomes of situations where you've got too many variables or you're unable to measure all the variables, and so you take a statistical kind of approach rather than trying to solve something deterministically. And it's a bit like type 1, type 2 human thinking. If you've ever read a book by Daniel Kahneman, it's very interesting. So, if you've got a big yellow thing with big teeth running at you, you don't want to be spending your time calculating the velocity and how long you've got to actually run away. You just get going. And that's kind of like AI. AI is that sort of type 1 thinking. But it's imperfect because it's statistical, it's estimates. So you want to use deterministic approaches where you can, but there's definitely a space for AI. Internet of Things, measuring things that you couldn't measure before, so making the intangible tangible. APIs, and this is what we're really all about. This is the connectivity bit, and connecting different data sources and monetizing data. If you're sitting on lots of data, you can actually make a business out of that as well. And then blockchain, enabling businesses to actually come up with intercompany automations, because you both trust the source of the data on which your workflows rely on. Okay, so what is our solution? So you've probably seen similar types of diagram to this many times before, but we're basically trying to turn something that's very messy and disorganized into something that's a lot more organized. So, we'll be able to tie together all the different phases of construction, and provide a single point to which you can integrate your software. Okay, and this isn't at the expense of other ecosystems. We're totally open to support those as well, but we're just trying to create something that's big enough to support the entire industry. And so, in terms of our strategy, we're open, not open source, but we're trying to establish an open culture. So, we're collaborating with the industry from the outset. There's no sort of preferential treatment for some of the big guys. Or anything like that, and the ethos is very much open, horizontal, rather than vertical and closed. I think we saw with the likes of Katerra that when you've got a closed, vertically integrated system, it doesn't really work, and you're expecting people to move everything into your system. So the idea is we work with what you've already got. As I said before, we're independent, so we spun off the company as a separate entity. Partly because if you're a startup, then you've got that kind of succeed or die culture, whereas in a corporate organisation, if the things start going wrong, you just move to another project, and that's not enough to really deal with those tough times. Have more agility and take more risks. It gives you that ability as well. But then the final one's probably the most important one. It's having an IP vehicle that can actually attract investment. If we're going to get the scale that we're planning to get, there's going to have to be a lot of investment over the years to really take this to where we want to get to. And then on the scalability, really the strategy is all about creating network effects. And this is the virtuous circle where, the more useful something is to a user, the more users it attracts, and therefore it's more useful. And so the way we try to tackle this is to bring in industry investors. So our first investors were actually part of the industry, including people like Cemex. We're also working with governments and industry bodies. Paul does loads of work with these guys, understanding what their needs are so that we can help tailor our solution to them, and then they support us. And we've also gone public very early as well. If you caught the press release earlier in the year, before we even launched the product. And the reason is because we're trying to bring people along on the journey from the outset and get your kind of thoughts on the way it should go. So by doing that, we think we can create the network effects that enable there to be that kind of single layer of connectivity that everyone can use, and you can enable your mission rooms and everything else, and just swap in and out different data sources rather than having to integrate everything point to point. We've got Mark Farmer, who's a big supporter. There's a great article here on the IBM website. Do have a read of that. And onto the actual platform itself. We created this platform, but there's a couple of pieces of software that sit on top of it, some flagship applications. And so we've got Automate, which is a bit like Power Automate, if you know the Microsoft tool, or Zapier, if you're familiar with that. But the key here is we're creating the connectors for the construction industry and the built environment. And most of them don't focus on this particular industry. Most of it's sort of back office work. Whereas we think if you can automate operational business processes, that's going to have much better kind of impact on productivity than be able to connect, your Gmail to Slack or whatever. Exchange is going to be a way of exchange. Well, Exchange and products is really all about exchanging information about products, services, equipment, and ultimately to be able to transact on that platform as well, and have a single kind of sort of merchant platform that is digitally enabled. It will store the information about what you've purchased and link it to the asset as well, so digital logbooks and all that kind of stuff. So you can really start building that thread through your asset right from the point of purchase. Okay, and that is basically it. I mean, we encourage people to get involved. There's a space on our website. If you want to get involved, register your details, and you can get involved in many different ways, whether it's just some basic research or taking part in a working group. But yeah, thanks for listening, and speak to you soon.